Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Talks. Today we have ESFPs versus ENFPs, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves. And so Brady, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Brady. I'm an ESFP 7-wing 8, and I'm really excited to be here. And there's a few people here who I haven't met that I'm super excited to meet because I watch their videos all the time. So yeah, Joyce asked us to talk a little bit about the ESFP versus ENFP, and I feel like I'm well suited for that because I'm married to an ENFP, and some of you may have seen that on the previous video. But we are very different, and some of the things are quite clear when you meet us, but more of it's kind of underneath the surface that you don't really see, that you kind of need to get to know the people a little bit more before it's really obvious, like when you try to make a decision together, and that's really funny when that happens.
Yeah, that is so cool. And Kyle?
Yeah, I'm Kyle. I'm coming from the middle of Canada, geographical center, and I'm married to an ISTP, so I'm pretty good with all of the functions in different places. I see a lot of that in action. But yeah, it'll be a good discussion today.
Exciting.
How much am I supposed to say about myself? We're keeping it short, so if I start describing myself, I'll go on for an hour. So.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. The signature NE monologue going on. Yeah. And Michelle?
Well, hello. I am Michelle, and I am an ENFP. I'm actually really excited about this one as well, because when I was new to MBTI, it was really hard for me to tell apart the two types. I would really relate to a lot of ESFPs all the time. And when I tried to tell other people, I'm like, I'm so similar to this person. Everyone's like, what are you talking about? You guys are nothing alike. And I'm like, yes, we are. We're so alike, like in our morals and like how we are. And they're like, no. You guys are like completely different people. So I think it'll be fun to explain this, because I wish something like this existed when I was younger, because it would have helped a lot to understand the difference between our types.
So true.
Hey y'all, I'm Mariana. I'm an ESFP from my title, 2-wing 3 Enneagram. I'm coming to you from Mississippi. And yeah, the last panel I think we did, Joyce, was an ENFP, ESFP panel. And I felt like so seen and like understood without like, we exchanged a lot of words, but I feel like we didn't, it was just that like foundational understanding, which I think is what Michelle was kind of alluding to with the FI. So for me, I think like when you're in it, even though we don't share the same like dominant function, but the two middle ones with FI and TE, I think it can be really hard for me to spot other ESFPs and ENFPs, knowing which one they are, because I feel like it kind of gets to a deep level pretty quickly in conversation, just like with our like code of ethics. I feel like, so
Totally.
I'm so glad to be here.
So absolutely true. And Kristin?
Hi everyone, my name's Kristin. I'm coming to you from Sydney, Australia. I make MBTI videos under the username Dear Kristin on YouTube, mostly comedy sketches. I'm really excited to be here. I've never been on a panel before, but I have watched them, and yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I have an ENFP sister, and she's one of my best friends, so I feel like I'm pretty aware of some of the differences between the two types, because there are like people who meet us at a party will say we seem very, very, very similar. But I think it's when you get sort of us more in a more intimate environment, you really start to see the differences between ENFP and ESFP. But I think at a party, we can really present the same. And I'm really excited to see how Joyce handles being with 5 EPs.
Right.
Yes.
We keep Joyce young for sure.
Yeah. I don't need anti-aging cream. I just need EPs. Yeah. So everyone, check out Dear Kristin and Heart of Michi. They are great YouTube channels, and they have really great FI code of ethics and character as people. So if you want to support creators who are great in the soul and great in content, go check them out. And so differences between ESFPs and ENFPs. What are some glaring obvious differences that you would see? Like what is most prominent that you see off the bat?
Well, theorizing a lot. I might be projecting from ENTJs I used to work with, but I know that obviously it's different functions, but I just think there's more like, I think our TE maybe manifests differently as like ESFPs. But
There'll
to me,
definitely be a more physical aspect to it, right? For
Yeah.
SE.
Yeah.
I know with SE in particular, there's a lot more value placed for you guys on something that you can deal with tangibly, like show it to me, right? And then I know. With ENFPs, it's almost like we won't see it if we, anyways, right? Like a little bit easier for us to. That's why I appreciate my ISTP wife with her SE. Keeps me a little bit more grounded and connected to reality, or like the tangible reality, right? It's like, oh, maybe you should take care of yourself a little bit. That's
when my wife and I are trying to, decide what to do next. That's always interesting because I'm very much like, I want to know the exact thing we're doing. Details. It's like, I want to know what time we're going. I want to know where we're going, those kind of things. And she'll brainstorm a bunch of ideas, but I don't know which ones she really wants to do, like versus which ones are important to her. And so I have to ask afterwards, like, okay, which one of those mattered to you? So we can kind of narrow it down and, pick a few, because we can't do all 11 of those things today. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's always fun.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is I probably drive her nuts because she's coming up with all these great ideas. I'm like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that, because I'm so practical, and that's
Yes.
probably something people don't expect from ESFPs, if you don't know us very well, is we have that really strong SETE relationship. And so, everything that we want to do is actually pretty rooted in reality. So
yeah.
I'm sure I feel like I have to be careful not to squash her creativity and imagination with things that she wants to do.
Yeah.
But that's
So is there an ESFP equivalent? So I feel like as an ENFP, we almost try on ideas like clothing.
Yes.
Right. Like, so we'll just start talking about something and go down there, and because we're trying it on, like, we not really help? We're not tied down to the first idea we come to. Is there an ESFP equivalent, or is it just literally trying on clothes? Can you think of something that's?
I love analogies, so thank you. I love picturing that. It's a great visual. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just constantly trying on experiences, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
That makes sense for sure. That's for people.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the biggest differences that you'll notice off the bat with ENFPs and ESFPs, if you're really looking, is in the interactions with other people. The ENFP will always be looking for a connection. They do, they're really sort of outgoing and friendly and really lovable, but at the heart, it'll be because they want to have connection with people. Whereas for us, whereas for ESFPs, it's just the experience in and of itself. My sister and I, we were recently at a wedding together, and we are finally allowed to dance here in Sydney on dance floors. And I was like, that's it. I was on the dance floor for 3 hours straight. And she was trying to come and dance with me and have a chat with me. And I was like, no. We're not going to be talking. I am dancing. Don't try and connect with me right now. The way to connect with me is to dance with me.
ESFP, it's my first social event. Yeah,
How are you guys doing with all this stuff?
Oh, I
feel
struggle.
terrible for you.
Oh, so bad.
It's horrible.
So bad.
Yeah.
For us, this is kind of like social dancing. Right? Just having a discussion. We're totally in it.
Yeah.
But you guys don't have that outlet, right? I guess you can run around outside, or how bad are your countries locked down?
Well, Mississippi's wide open right now, not surprisingly.
There's an ENFP, called Heidi Preeb that's on my panels a lot. And she had this tweet, which I thought was pretty good. SI is a huge part of NPs' lives. In my opinion, it's the quickest way to distinguish NPs from SPs. Do you have a bunch of strange neurotic rules that govern how you interact with your environment? Or do you take things in your environment as it comes? Yeah, whereas SE users tend to take things in their environment as it comes, and ENFPs might have strange neurotic rules. that are SI.
I
Yeah.
feel like called out, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, define neurotic.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's literally like the source of frustration between me and my boyfriend, because he's like, you just clean things as you come to, because he's an INTJ, so he has the same cognitive functions. He's just like, clean it as you go. When you see it, do it. And I'm like, I literally don't see it. I need to build these routines or it's not going to get done. Like, it's either I'm always doing it or I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not just going to suddenly start perceiving it better. That's just not going to happen.
I struggle with that kind of in some ways, though, with like my TE, where I'm like, I'm either like doing everything, doing like all the things, or I'm like, okay, I'll like let it slide for a couple of weeks. But then where I'm like, it's like, I'm like, I can't just, I'm like not mature enough to like set up processes, you know, like the processes I set up are like automatic payments on my credit card. So I like don't have late payments. Like those are like the things in my life that I set up. But I don't know, like that, I do like relate to that in some ways, but also I think you probably relate to that obviously more ENFPs with what Heidi said with her quote about SI. Because I think we probably do take our environments more like as they come to us. I'm like, just go with the flow. Like, I'm sure stresses out the the SJs in my life as well, you know?
Yeah, here's an example of ENFP neuroticism. This is true for some ENFPs. So I was cooking with my ENFP. She makes exact measurements. Like they're so exact. They seem so unnecessarily neurotic. Yeah. Or
like level out the
knife. Yeah, get the knife. Yeah.
Then I know for next time.
Yeah. So that's the SI of the ENFP. And so Kyle had a point earlier where he said that ESFPs are generally more observant than ENFPs. And that's true. And so with my ENFP, what will happen is sometimes she'll get excited about like an ideal. She'll buy a certain thing like coconut milk, and at the back it'll have a recipe. And from reading that recipe, she was like, oh, do we have like these items for that meal? And it was like, it takes a while for like reality to click in sometimes for the ENFP. And it's like, that was just a recipe. Yeah.
I think that makes sense though, Joyce. I think like maybe to add to that with ESFPs or maybe just SE DOMs in general or just SEs, we're a little more practical minded where I'd be like, this recipe does look great. I don't even think I might want to make this. Like, especially if I get like buy like a bag of like chocolate chips, like semi-sweet or like, this like brownies in the back look so good. I'm not a big, like, I don't cook a lot or anything. I do a lot of DoorDash these days, but I would probably know if I had like most of those ingredients and I'd be like, I don't have this, or I don't even feel like going, I have to buy all these things. I'm not just gonna, I think it's a little more like grounded, like in the moment where I'm like, like I'm not going to do it. Or I know I don't have this. I wouldn't get home and then be like, I'm going to make this and then realize I didn't have it. I don't know if that.
For me, it's like, well, I know I've had it at some point in the past. And if I can't find it, like it could be there. I just can't find it.
Yeah, I can't risk buying more
that
stuff.
Is always the thought. Like, if I buy it, would I just be wasting my time? Then I'd have to come back to the store and return it.
Yeah.
And so the antidote is like very strictly regiment the system. That's the only way to actually access that. Otherwise, who knows where it could be. And what's worse is if it changes containers. So if, something like with new branding or something, it's like now I can't find it at all because they changed the color of the package of my regular almond or something.
I hate when stores rearrange themselves. Like,
I feel like honestly, maybe TESI might be a little more like nightmarish than
I think
ENI. I'm like, whoa, that actually sounds like a crazy roller coaster.
Absolutely.
For some things. For some things.
Yeah. For some ENFPs, they're like, this one item has one place. And if it's put in another place, they might not be able to find it. Yeah, it was one of my ENFP friends. She has that problem. Whereas like ESFPs, maybe if you put something in a different place, they can figure out where it is. They're like, I can see it around. Yeah. That makes any sense.
Yeah,
I would have I would have a mantra going out to work when I was working at a greenhouse. It would be, I'd always say it out loud too. I'd go to the door and say, wallet, keys, cell phone, hat. Now I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And there had to be right by the door so that they could get them all. And so you have that routine set up. Yeah. My kids could chant along with me and it was all good. I didn't lose my keys.
I've noticed that ENFPs do a lot more routines than ESFPs do. It's like at our house, I just kind of do whatever. It doesn't, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'm just like, oh, I feel like doing this now. Or, I put my keys and wallet in the wherever and I find it and I move on. My wife has the same spot every time. And if it's not there, it's panic, but if I have it somewhere else, I'll just find it. No big deal. So it's interesting how different we are that way.
Is that maybe like a big difference right there is like impulsivity? I think with SE where
well, you can get away with it better with physical impulsivity.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean, like it's, if you just drop your keys wherever, you'll be able to pick them up again wherever you find them. For us, if we just drop our keys wherever we're not present, then they could be anywhere.
You can leave them on your lap. I've lost things on my lap before. 100%.
Sunglasses on the head.
I've been looking for my phone when I was on it before. I was like trying to get out the door and I'm like, oh my God, like, why am I even admitting this on a video right now? That's so embarrassing.
So that's like us every day though.
Every day. Sometimes right after the last time you did it.
That is so true. Kristin, what are some things you notice that are different between you and your sis?
Yeah, well, one thing is I relate to what Brady was saying earlier in the sense that like she would always come up with all these ideas that we could do. And one thing that like before I understood MBTI, like as a child growing up with her, one thing that would like hurt me was that she would be like, oh my goodness, Kristin, we should do this thing. Like we'll go to the park and we'll set out like a picnic. We'll go to the shops. We'll, buy all these ingredients. We'll do this, and we'll have like the best day ever. And then I'd be like, sweet, like when's this happening? And I'd be really looking forward to it. And then she'd be like, oh no, like I've changed my mind, or nah. And then I kind of would over time when I realized that this was a sort of trait that she had, and I like was really excited to go out and do the thing, I'd be like, you always say these things that we don't do, and she kind of was like, yeah, because most of the excitement is talking about the thing. And when she chats with my ENTP brother, like they just enable each other in that, and they start talking about like they're just running with that NE, and they're literally just like, I couldn't understand why they don't want to go traveling, for instance.
Yeah.
And my brother was like, because I can just think about like traveling, and then that's like enough for me. Like it's just fun to think about being somewhere. And I'm like, no, like
no,
to me it's like, talking about is the lead up to the actual experience. The experience is what I really want. I don't get. Yeah, so I had to learn. It was a long process of letting down my expectations.
Oh yeah.
Great example. Like that's a great.
Yeah.
She's great, though. I want to give the disclaimer just in case she's watching this, which I know she will. She's much better at this now.
It's a maturity thing for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I love traveling.
That is so true, though. ENFPs gain a lot of joy from ideating and brainstorming. Yeah. Follow through isn't always necessary.
No, it's not really necessary at all.
That took me a long time in marriage. It was like 10 years before that really started to land with me, like what Kristin's talking about, because I was like, why aren't we doing any of the things that we're talking about? Or which one of these 8 ideas is actually happening? I wouldn't do the follow-up questions. And so I just assumed, oh my gosh, we're doing all this weekend. Do I get to make any choices? And, she just wanted to present ideas. It wasn't like she had an attachment to them. That took time because I'm so black and white and so practical. It's
Well, you mentioned attachment too, and like let's get technical a little bit here. What I find very interesting is that your extroverted perceiving process is typically extroverted processes are known as objective because you're dealing with objective data from the outside world, but your process goes through the instrument that is your own body. So it's also, your extroverted process is very subjective, probably the most subjective of all of the objective processes. You with me so far? And then your baby, introverted intuition, your backseat function there, it's again an introverted function, so it is known as subjective, but it actually is fairly objective, like it has a distance from itself. So your extroverted perceiving process is probably the most subjective out of the objective processes. And your subjective perceiving process is the most objective out of the subjective processes. But for ENFPs, I feel like it's the opposite. So our extroverted intuition, it technically kind of happens inside, but it's just not personal, right? Like it's not really about us at all. But then our extroverted objective process is very objective. But then our subjective backseat function, our baby function, introverted sensing, is like super subjective about our subjective experiences and our subjective. So like we have both extreme. Oh, here, get it on camera. Both extremes, on both ends. Whereas I don't know how you spin a narrative around that, but ESFPs, I think there's just a lot more present personableness to you, whereas for us, there's almost like we're personable, kind of, but almost impersonally. So, if that makes it all sense.
No,
like,
it does. Like, so when my wife and I are at a party, it's funny because she talks more than I do, like, more words. But if we're at a party, I'm talking to way more people, way more often, making much more of a fool of myself than she is. But she's the one who uses more words. It's really fascinating. Like she'll be really nervous going into a party, very reserved, and I'm not. I can just meet anyone and start talking. Like I don't care, but that is not true for her. But yet she uses so many more words. It's really fascinating to me.
I think there was something someone said, I think it was you, about impulsivity and how SE is quite impulsive, like in the physical reality. Well, I think NE is very impulsive conversationally. Like we'll take the conversation wherever, a lot of times without thinking. And that's actually like a learned skill we have to develop over time, is to not whiplash the conversation constantly and like let it kind of like follow some semblance of a path that people can hang on to.
Yeah, you noticed what I did there?
Yeah, I was like, are you calling out Kyle?
And I thought I'd just dive like crazy into some intuitive
No, that's got like my brain like kind of spinning right now. But I wanted to get Joyce's thoughts, and also Chris. I guess Brady dropped off. Okay, he's probably coming back. But I've never really thought about what you said. I thought the opposite. I feel like SC but I guess it's very subjective. Everybody's experience is subjective, but it feels so realistic. It feels like I don't feel like I really apply. I don't know, but that's so easy to say, like, because it's like you're in your own thoughts. But it feels like it's very grounded in reality and very present and practical, where there's not attachment to it. And I'm only thinking about this. I don't know if you know Susan or Daniel Storm, but Susan's an INFJ and her husband Daniel's an ESTP. And I did a video with Susan and Daniel. It was like with Susan's like work she does, and it was some video she was putting together with like all the 16 types, but she was kind of grouping them together by dominant function. So me as an ESFP and her husband Daniel, the ESTP, we did a video with her kind of on learning styles, like from maybe 6 years old to 12 years old. And me and Daniel had so many. I mean, obviously you hadn't really developed into your FI or TI whenever that kind of comes on board, but so many of the same like just experiences in childhood, and they really felt so detached, like from feeling. But it just, I don't know, but maybe it is subjective. I feel like SE just feels so objective though. It just feels like it's just whatever is there that's like truly right in front of your face. Now, of course you have filters you apply to it. We're all very subjective to some degree, but I don't know, Joyce, I want to get your thoughts on that, because I like what Kyle brought up though. It's a different way to think about it.
Yeah, with the SE DOMs that I invite on, they call their SE objective. They kind of describe it like this. You're looking at this phone, and it's kind of like you're looking at this phone for the first time, like as a baby, like without any assumptions. But I'm not talking about the phone. I'm trying to like get at that as an extrapolating point for all experiences. So it's almost like you're not placing any assumptions on it until you actually experience it. Yeah, the experience speaks for itself.
Yeah, so I think to clarify, the subjective part of it is that you're actually attached to reality, if that makes sense. Like you're part of that reality, whereas for any DOM, we're not really, like we're actually detached, not in a necessarily bad way, but we can, I guess that intuitive nature can take a step back from being present so that we're looking at it not as it is, but maybe as it could be. or like it's a little bit detethered maybe.
Okay.
Whereas your body's like, so mechanically speaking, I'm so not talking about what it values, but mechanically speaking, you subjectively are in your body and present and actually getting signals from the environment, which is pretty wild. And, right? Like, so you're actually there.
But that's reality, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess perception's reality. But.
Okay, I've had so many discussions with my NE siblings about what reality is. So.
Yeah, perception is reality. But couldn't you say you're attached to your ideas in some ways as NE? Not you, I mean like you in general, but like couldn't you say in some ways that's an attachment to creating ideas?
Yeah.
Just food for thought. I'm just curious.
I feel like for intuitives, figuring out life is more real than living life itself. Thinking about life and thinking about what it could be is more real than what actual concrete life is for intuitives.
So there are times when I'm talking to my wife about an issue, and she'll get really attached to the concept of the issue instead of the details that are impacting me. And so let's say it's like loneliness during COVID. So I'll be bringing up the details of how I'm lonely, what's happening, that kind of stuff. And she'll then go into more of the theories about why people would get lonely or why, those kind of things. And I'm like, hey, come back.
Right here.
Come back
so
home.
Relatable.
Right here.
Relatable.
Yeah, and I think the attachment probably stems from our judging functions anyways. Like a perceiving process isn't really, like it's just open-ended and receiving, right? So specifically the, talking mechanically now, concretely, the attachment to ideas, definitely FITE, but then, the NE is pulling up more information, like all these new data points, like, oh yeah, there's patterns here. People get lonely because of all of these things. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry on behalf of your wife.
No, she's wonderful. I'll do the same disclaimer that person did.
We'll
She's wonderful.
I've
been married for 15 years, together 18. So it's like, I'm obviously happy with the relationship. So
definitely, for sure. Yeah. It seems like, Kyle, the detachment that you're describing seems like ENFPs are detached to the details of things, basically. Like they're detached to the parts of an explanation, but they're more interested in like the theoretical concept overarching all of everything. And
the principles of it, like, because that's the important part after all. The principle.
Yeah, it's not subjective though. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think this is where the clear difference between SE and NE like really comes in, and you realize just how different they are, because the amount of times like I'll be in a conversation with my ENFP and ENTP siblings, and they'll be talking about those abstracts and those ideas, and I'll be like, guys, can we just like ground it in some kind of like reality or practical example? And they're like, they would dispute what reality is and what's important about that. And I'm like, no, but this is reality. And then they'll try it. So sometimes they might try to give me advice or tell me about how something is based on some intuitive idea that they have, which to them is very real. But to me, I'm like, I'm sorry, I just can't take that on board unless that proves itself to be the case in my world, in like reality, So it feels really objective to us, but it feels really NE, like your NE experience feels really objective to you guys as well. So the difference is just so stark.
Which is makes it subjective, I guess, for both.
Like when I talked about principles, I kind of feel like for you guys, you still care about principles, but it's like the laws of gravity are just as real to us as maybe some abstract laws of, socioeconomic disparities or something, right? Like, to an NE, but for you, for SE, I think you care about principles too. They just maybe are grounded more.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I've never thought about that in my life. But
very interesting to think about. Because I feel like, to Kristin's point, like when she was talking about her siblings, because sometimes it's like, well, that's not really reality, or whatever they say, like where you really see the difference. And I'm sure you feel teamed up on sometimes, like with two NEs, like two dominees with you. But it's like, okay, well, my reality right now is the body language in this room. These people are starting to get pissed off because we're like standing in a hallway, taking up room, and people can't walk by. Like that is my reality right now. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? It's like body reality or like, which, and it's not, to me, that's not subjective. Like people are actually like, I'm thinking about the ENTJs I worked with, they would just get so caught up in conversation. And sometimes it was interesting. Sometimes it wasn't because it was like about accounting. I'm like, this is boring, but they're theorizing about accounting, like little nerds. It's more on like, y'all are so in your objective, I guess, reality of any, or I guess that'd be NI, but that you're not even looking around, looking at the physical surroundings. Like we're actually standing in the way of people right now.
Yeah.
And my SC is like just stressing the F out. So I'm like, oh, people hate us right now, you know?
Yeah. The SE is aware of present reality, and the present reality demands, like, so the present moment and what it's like currently demanding of you. Whereas the NE user, the ENFP, is aware of the multiverse, the meta reality. Yeah. ENFPs are in parallel universe land.
Like in a wormhole somewhere. And I'm like, come back real quick. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think there has been 2 repeating themes that I think are really important to pay note of. At least like for me, like when I'm trying to tell the difference between SE and NE and an ESFP, because we really do tend to have a lot of similar values. Like when something happens and somebody does something that we don't like, we generally agree that the other person is wrong, and we'll be able, like, we'll both get very emotional about like what needs to be done. And the ESFP is like, all right, we're going to handle this right now. We're going to deal with it now. And the ENFP is like, well, can we have some time to like think this through? Like, I don't know if this is how I want to feel right now. Like, can I have some time to process, please? But I think 2 defining characteristics of SE are practical, which is a term that's been thrown around a couple times and is actually the #1 term I'd use for SE, but also detail oriented. Like my boss is an ESTP, but I mean, the lead SE is still the same. He looks for the details in what other people bring when they're bringing up their plans or when they're talking about things. And that's how he actually determines competency, is by how many details they include. Which I'm like, well, but look at all these things they said. Like, they know exactly what they're talking about. And he's like, yeah, they know what I want to hear. And I'm like, what? That's how I would answer. Like, I wouldn't bring details in there.
With ESFPs, with that lead SE, they're very realistic. Like, I really love the word realistic for them. Perceptive, observant. With changes in the environment, the SE user is the first to notice or to pick up on.
Noises.
It's like a kitchen timer feels like an alarm clock to me. You know, like, or like a fire alarm
before it hits 0. I'm like, I don't want to hear that noise.
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly. Like my wife can leave that going and going and going. I'm like, turn it off. You know?
That makes me anxious.
When I was in college, I had to have one of those blaring alarms, so it kicked enough adrenaline out of me, so I just jump out of bed. So then I'm standing with them awake. Because if it's like nice music or something, I'll just ignore this.
Yeah,
I'll go into my world of thoughts.
You can just vibe with it.
Yeah.
I love those thoughts, those points you brought up though, Michelle, and I talking about the detail oriented as well. Whenever I took the MBTI like officially through my old company. I think I've shared that on some videos before, but I know I have it around like the official results somewhere, but I scored like, it was like with the official instrument, at least, I don't know if y'all taken it, but if you have, you get that big packet back. They do it like on the, what do you call it? Like, it's like E versus I, like S versus N, where you're like looking at the 2 and it kind of measures how strong you are for each letter. Now, of course, those are standalone. They're not really looking at a cognitive function level at that point in the first part of the report. But I scored like off the charts on us. And then I was like, so far P, where I was like, this is uncomfortable, like reading about how far P I am. Obviously, you combine those, you're going to get the ESFP result. I was over the line a little bit on F. But the detail-oriented, I think that can get associated really hardcore with SI. And I'm like, yeah, they're all in the details. They're the annoying ones. I'm like, God, I love some details, you know? And I scored like really high on that. It was like that and like maybe tradition. I can't remember what they do it like on like 2 different like scales or whatever. It's like comparing this characteristic versus this characteristic. So like S versus N had 5 different characteristics. And like with tradition, I scored really, obviously that kind of sounds like SI, but I think that it's like the expectation, like kind of knowing it's I don't know, but really, I guess the details part is like the thing where I was like, the more I've looked back at those results since like 2014, the more I'm like, am I like an ESFJ? But I'm like, I scored so high on P. I really don't think I'm FE because that just really gets me going with FI. But yeah, I do
There's
think
a lot of surface bias baked into there. Like tradition could just as easily be FI, right? Like all about values and received values, totally, right? Like I value these things, and my parents kind of instilled this in me. You guys could totally go there too.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Yeah, it kind of that's like overlap with SI and FI for sure.
Yeah. I also kind of think that SI is more about someone's own traditions than just society's traditions, anyways. That's something that we kind of get mixed up with occasionally.
What they've experienced in the past.
Yeah, so true. And so to keep the topic on ENFPs and ESFPs,
we have SI in us too.
Yeah. They also call it, Mariana's showing us the MBTI test right now.
Oh, here's sorry, you can see it's like concrete. Let's see. Like abstract. I like scored 0 on N. So we know I'm not an ENFP, but
yeah, when someone shows proof of something like that, like Mariana showed her report for us to see, that's called sensor proof. So sensors kind of examples, evidence proof, they're like going to actually show you the thing. Whereas intuitives will talk about it and go like, wow, great idea, but they won't show you any.
I'm like, I swear I have results here.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you've been managing an ISTP for 19 years, then you show proof.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah. And so what are some micro habits you notice that are different between ENFPs and ESFPs?
I have a small one. I think that ESFPs are much better storytellers in general than ENFPs. That's a small difference. We try to get our stories out there, but we like get caught up in like bringing up random details that are not relevant. And ESFPs are really good at the delivery and like the punchline of the stories. It's fantastic.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was going
to say more extroverted of the type. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just like, do you think ESFPs are more extroverted overall?
I think so.
Long-windedness versus short-windedness. ENFPs tend to, from my experience, talk for longer, more words, more deviations, more tangents, etc. And sometimes we can be super dry and just say something very quick, very succinctly, almost to the point sometimes where I make a joke and someone doesn't know I'm making a joke and they think I'm crazy. Because it's so dry in the way that I'm presenting it.
Or an asshole, yeah.
And then sometimes my wife has to be like, he's kidding, and then they know.
Oh, that's so relatable.
Yeah, that's relatable. Kristin, could you go into that?
I feel like I'm a very recently in a comment section of one of my videos, people were arguing about whether ESFPs are sweet. Like I associate, like we can be sweet because we have that FI, but I associate sweetness more with FE in a sense. And I don't know, like for me, I've definitely rubbed people the wrong way because I've made a joke too quickly after meeting them. And I'm quite sarcastic as well. And I can be very like dry, as Brady said, and especially because I have the FI, but like when I go into the TE mode, I can just say things how it is really bluntly.
Yes.
And people can get like offended if it's an FE user or whatever. So I really relate to being dry, and so I've had to add the disclaimer afterwards, like I was joking, because I'm not sure how it's going to be taken sometimes, and some people pick up on it sometimes, others don't. I
feel like that like falls like flat on SFJs especially, but I'm like, I'm really not an asshole. I was just, my way of bonding with you was like to joke around and like to make fun of you, like where it's like all it's supposed to be playful, but like then you meet somebody and you do it way too soon. You're like,
100%.
Oh God, what can I do? Like we hate things.
Well, I've been called out quite a few. Sorry, Michelle, you go ahead.
No, I was gonna make a joke.
Please go ahead.
We hear it.
I was just gonna say some of those reactions on America's Next Top Model must have been from ESFPs. There are like 2 in particular that pissed off Nigel Barker because they joked way too soon and made fun of him in some way, and he's like, "Oh, that's so disrespectful," and they were like, "I did it too soon."
It must be an acting user, I'm sorry.
So Michelle, how often do you joke in public? Like not with your best friends, but with just general people?
If I joke, it's safe jokes usually. Like dad jokes are one of my favorite types of jokes, or my general type of humor is like how do I say it? It's like not even humorous. It's like to sing what I'm thinking and stuff. Like I turn things into songs. Like that's my humor. It's not even
That's
funny.
my whole childhood, turning things into songs with my sister.
With ENFPs, with my ENFP, what would happen is she'd randomly riff off and do a song. Like what we were doing would remind her of a song, and then she'd sing it. For example, I'd be waiting alone, or I'd look kind of lonely, and then she'd sing, "Oh, by myself."
Yeah.
Yeah, she'll just like, yeah, it'll remind her of something, and she'll just like, yeah, do that.
That's so cute.
My kids know the classics because of that.
Definitely. Yeah. Brady mentioned a really, really amazing point with extroverted intuition users. So with ENFPs, if you count their words per minute, like ENFPs will definitely, on average, talk way more than ESFPs. Like
Once you get it started.
Yeah. Once you get the ENFP started, like they might be quiet because they know that the topics they're into or the way that they talk may not be normal for a lot of people.
Accepted.
But yeah, accepted. It may not be accepted. But when ENFPs do share, they tend to go on an NE monologue. So they'll like speak and it'll go really, 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 really far. Yeah.
I see Kristin and Brady nodding like, yes.
Yeah. No, I got to be careful here.
Yeah. And another possible difference maybe between the ENFP and the ESFP is I noticed with my ENFP, she has very eccentric friends. So she'll get friends from many different places. Mm-hmm. And if you get an ENFP's friends all in one place, they won't know how to get along with each other because they're
like
all
each other,
so
probably. Yeah.
That's the most frustrating thing too. You have no idea.
That's so funny.
Really?
I did not know that.
Yeah, never. Yeah, that's funny.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm curious too.
Yeah, I mean, for example, in high school, in my one math class, I was with seniors and I was a junior, and I had started to become friends with a couple of the seniors, and they were more like the cheerleader jock type people. And I had just like kind of become friends with them in this class, but we didn't really like talk outside of class because the kind of people that I hung out with at lunch, I tended to hang out with like the theater people and the foreign exchange students. And we would all hang out and it'd be really loud, of course, at the lunch area. And like, no cheerleader really wants to hang out with the theater geeks really. So we wouldn't like try to talk to each other or anything. And then after school, I was friends with like the skaters, the kind of people
the gothic kids.
Yeah, especially. Yeah. And also I was like a little bit of a weeaboo before that was a word. So I had like my anime nerd friends. Anime nerd. It just means that you're like really obsessed with Japanese culture.
Okay. Okay.
So we'd hang out and we'd draw after school, and then, you know, the list can go on, but I mean, none of these people are going to interact with
all
each
walks
other.
of life. Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty common EP thing. I mean, maybe I don't know if it's an EFP thing, maybe more than just an EP thing, but I had friends from like every friend group or every like, what do you call that? Clique group. Yeah, so jocks, nerds, whatever. You know, I could be friends with anybody.
Yeah.
But blending them together was kind of awkward sometimes.
Because I think ESFPs are just you're way better at body language, and you just get along with. You have the potential to get along with people better because you kind of see what they're experiencing a little bit more. I think from the ENFP standpoint is that we're really feeding our judging processes. We want to feed that with as much diverse ideas and perspectives as possible. Like it's our roundabout way of getting a shift in perspectives. Like we want to understand more because we just want to hear all these different people. And so the more different they are, the better. And that's probably the diversity of knowledge.
Yeah. It's more almost like you're almost like having different, almost like a boardroom in some ways where you're like, okay, for diversity of thought here, like where maybe ESFPs also have a diverse room, but it's like, well, I just was on this plane and I met this person and we started talking and now like I'm going to be a bridesmaid. You know, none of it was like ever intentional.
But there's something very attractive to other people about extroverted sensing and the presence and the reaction that you're giving because you're there with somebody. Unless it's an ENFP that starts spouting off and going super abstract, but like as long as we're keeping it, keeping it real.
Keeping it real.
I think people like to be around you guys a lot when you're being your authentic selves. I think ENFP we have to hold back a little bit for other people's sake, but we're very interested in the other people. So I don't know.
For different reasons, probably.
Just talking it out. But
do you that makes me think, and I think Joyce, maybe we've talked about this on a panel before, but like kind of FI, I feel like the way I understand my FI or how it kind of helps me is by not befriending people to get their freaking traumas, but like understanding people to be like, okay, well, I've never been in this situation, so I can't empathize like in the true sense of the word because I have never been there, but like by almost collecting different experiences in that way, in an emotional way, it's like, okay, because I know sometimes I feel like people can be so unfairly judged, and I'm not by any means like advocating for murder, but when people go off on these spree, you're like, okay, that's obviously fucked up. I don't think they should be out on the streets. But what if like we dove into like how they were raised? Like, is this more like a systems thing? This is not like they just woke up one day. Really to more understand the person, to give a more humanizing element. So I don't know if maybe in an FI way, it's kind of like an analogy with maybe what you're saying about any, or it's like if I can collect more and more, I can understand almost like where I don't know. I don't really feel like I'm not wording that well, but maybe you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. I think when you bring up criminals and things, I think FI is really good at, instead of going right to the place of what's wrong with you, how could you possibly do this? I think it's a lot more satisfactory for us to ask what happened to you.
Right.
Like that's far more meaningful when you were dealing with anybody, because now we, instead of saying what's wrong with you, like, because it's not about thinking the wrong things like FETI, tends to do, not everybody, but it's just more useful to say what happened to you. Now we can deal with this and maybe we can prevent it in the future.
Maybe prevent it as well. And then maybe have more social justice, like where you kind of tap into like, to me, I think everybody, like Joyce and I have talked about this, and I think on the one-on-one video we did probably this past summer, but it was more like, to me, my number one core value, well, I don't know, I probably have 3 of them that are like non-negotiables. I don't give a shit, like where I'm like, everybody should be treated with, I guess, really respect, but I think that everybody should always at least get a sense of belonging because we're all humans. And I'm not going to back down on that. That to me, that's like a non-negotiable. That is subjective, but to me, it's objective. And so things like that, like with just social justice, and not, I know that's like that's overplayed, like a social justice word. I don't.
Is that a swear word in the States? Is that a swear word in the States?
To some people,
exactly. Yeah, I was like, not to like I don't want to get on that. I'm like, I swear I'm not a douchebag, but in that way, where I do think EFPs will really kind of like, especially like around the same age or kind of on the same like maturity, like where you're like, okay, I just think in general, like human rights, I don't think that's negotiable. I really don't. And I think that's where like, maybe this is, I don't know. I know Joyce, we have to wrap this video up soon, but I feel like this is a commonality, like where you see, we don't all have like the same core values, obviously, but you'd be hard pressed to find, I think, an EFP or I guess a high FI user that's like, fuck human rights. I think the human experience it's so important. And humanizing somebody, just because you're like, well, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I made some really bad decisions myself, and no one, threw stones at me, or you know what I mean? Like there's always shame involved with that, and there's also reconciliation. And if someone offers you really grace, I just think that FI really, especially EFPs, because we figure that out later in circuits, usually in life, as we mature through experiences. So it's like
we extrapolate more outside than IFPs for sure.
Yeah.
Like we can't help but kind of putting it out there.
I can't be quiet
yeah.
about it. Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
my PE's like, yeah, let's do it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you kind of started out is you said that ESFPs like collecting experiences to understand other people better, if I summarize it correctly, whereas we kind of collect ideas to understand other people better. It's just very similar. But you just like to do things with people more, and we just like to
like different means like to the same end kind of thing. Yeah.
That's our synergy, really. Like this is how I survive with my wife, is that we love to go hiking together. Like we like to do adventures together.
Yeah.
I do like to go out into the real world, into the concrete world. I'll just talk about abstract.
I do leave this room sometimes, I swear.
Yeah, but I'd love to hang out with the ESFPs. They get me to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of data that's useful too. Like I appreciate that tangible, concrete data as well as the abstract.
My ESFP mom is always doing something, whether it's doing barbecue with friends or she's going to like this new amazing restaurant she's heard of, or she's doing something. Like she's always on the go. Go. And so that's a really good point. To go back to the friend groups and so the diversity of friends, the difference I was trying to illustrate between ENFPs and ESFPs in the way that they have friends is, I guess, like they both have very diverse friend groups, but they approach it differently. So I noticed with ESFPs, they kind of view their friends as experiences. Yeah. Yeah.
ENFP
Sounds so bad, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Better than tools, right? If we get into our TE.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stay out of the TE. We don't.
Oh my goodness.
ENFPs, they kind of see their friends as conceptual fodder. So it's almost like they want friends who view the world in fundamentally different ways so that they can feel their extroverted intuition. So yeah. So lots of friends for different purposes. Yeah. Kristin, I saw that you unmuted your mic, so you might have something you wanted to say.
Yeah, just on the friends group thing, I noticed that like the ESFPs in this room were like, huh? When Michelle and Kyle said, oh, if you put our friends in one room, they wouldn't get along. And we asked you to elaborate. And then as you were talking, I realized, oh, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I also have a lot of diverse friends who probably wouldn't get along if you put them in a room too. But the difference is I've never, that's the thing. Like I've never thought about it because I think as ESFPs, we have such confidence in our ability to be around those friends and ensure that they're going to have a good time.
Yes.
Like I'm like, I don't care, because I've tried to organize parties before with my siblings and someone will be like, I don't know about getting these two groups in the same room together. And I'm like, oh, we're going to have a great time. Are you kidding me? We'll get some beer, we'll play some games. It'll be awesome. I'm just like so confident in the ability to make everyone have a good time. And also I'm less inclined to notice when someone in a room doesn't get along. I don't know if you can get it, like agree with this ESFPs, but I'm so present, like when I'm in a room with friends, I'm so present in the moment, I'm not really thinking a lot. So I won't notice those little intricate sort of behind the scenes things that are going on in people's, that maybe ENFPs would take a step back and be like, oh, those people are struggling to get along. I would just be like, everyone's having a great time. And then afterwards someone will be like, oh yeah, these people were a bit awkward. And I was like, were they? Like, I noticed that.
I have this. Yeah, Kristin, that absolutely happens. Like we'll be hanging out with my family and, on the drive home, we always have these debriefs and my wife will be like, she'll be like, oh my gosh, your mom was, seemed like she was really down about something or she was like her shadow self. And I was like, really? Like she seemed happy to have everyone there, like it's just totally oblivious. Like,
so oblivious.
I feel like that's like when we suck at body language. I'm the same way where I'll get so wrapped up in a conversation. Like even right now, there could be a fire. I mean, I would smell it, but it's like I get so. It's like almost like all my superpowers I get blinded. I'm like I know exactly what y'all are saying. Like I so relate to that. Where I'm like, wait, what? Like I missed something. It's like you didn't see all the drama that was happening. I'm like, no, I was in a one-on-one conversation for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I thought everybody was vibing,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, get me in a one-on-one convection and that's all that exists. Really. I wouldn't smell the smoke, really, honestly. That's why I have to have sensors around me so I stay alive.
That's a huge difference between ESFPs and ENFPs. I feel like ESFPs love small talk in those social situations. And ENFPs are like, I can't. Just let's go deeper. Can we go deeper?
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it more the
yeah.
heart of the emotional experience with you? Like, so you're making an impact in this person's life. It's like small talk, as in really the deeper communication for you guys is going on at a sensory level rather than at a word level, like being in another person's presence.
Yeah, well, if you think about, I guess, what Joyce said of our friends being experiences.
Yeah.
If we're in a social situation where, like, come on, let's, like, we really just care about sort of being present and having fun. And not that, I mean, maybe if someone talks to us about, again, like tapping into that FI, something we're really passionate about, like human rights, whatever it is, then we'll be totally in that conversation. But otherwise, it's like, oh, I don't want to be standing here for 10 minutes in a conversation when there's like 700 other people I could meet, or there's a dance floor over there, or there's cake that I haven't even tried yet, all these other things.
But if we do like that one good conversation, I'm like, I'm in all night. You know what I mean? But, like, I won't know
absolutely.
Then I'm like, we're locked in, you know, like we can do the rest of the night. I know going like to my old companies, like Christmas parties, it was just so overwhelming in some ways, because there's no way, like you don't see all these people, like it's like probably 300 people. You know, I mean, I feel like ESFP is like, you know, a lot of people, like, you know, in the work setting when people used to go into the office, and Christmas parties would almost stress me out, because I do enjoy small talk. It's not that, well, it was that I never felt like I had enough hours in the night to like really catch up with somebody and to like I feel like I don't have like talent in that. It's like, I like really like want to catch up with you, even if it's just 5 minutes, but like a one-on-one every time. And to make me feel like that I really care, because I do care. I think maybe that's some like Enneagram too. And also like I just want people to feel like they belong, or that like I really truly interested and I care about them. And I don't like want them to think, oh, she just like, blew me off. Like I'm thinking way more about it than they are. I do think that's very Enneagram 2 probably showing up. But it would just stress me out. I feel like I just couldn't get around everybody. And I wanted to go a little bit like just deeper than super surface level. I'm like, I suck at Christmas parties, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a fan. I want to get a drink, but I'm in the middle of conversation. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah. The thing is, for me, I'm exactly the same. And so I'd rather have those one-on-one catch-ups, that one-on-one, like let's get coffee later so I can fully focus on you in a different part in the week. Literally, people in my life who know me so well now, they'll literally be like, if you want to have a deep conversation with Kristin, do not approach her at a party. She will not pay attention to you. She'll be focusing on several hundred other things.
And it'll stress her out.
Yeah, exactly. So
if you want to have a deep conversation at a party, talk to an ENFP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If someone wants to go, yes, I'm like, my friend Kyle's over there. He would love to talk to you. You know, I'm gonna get a drink real quick.
Yeah, this is lovely. And so, any last points everyone wants to mention before it all ends?
I just want to say, I was about to say the same thing about you guys.
I think it's funny that ESFPs are so aware, like even when they drink, they're still like paying attention to everything, because even for me, even when I'm drinking, my mind is like running a million miles per hour thinking about everything that people do and like what their different body movements mean and what that relates to what they're thinking at the time and what they're feeling at the time. Like I could never, even drunk, like even like the drunkest I've ever been, that's still going on. And then I'm thinking like, oh man, am I too drunk? Are they noticing that I'm too drunk?
Wow. That's like an NI grip, but being sober. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
I want to say that I think ENFPs are great, and I also appreciate all of your self-awareness. I'm very impressed with you guys right now. I also want to say that I think ENFPs are like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but they're one of the types that's the best at laughing at themselves. My housemate's an ENFP and my sister's an ENFP, and they're the best at laughing at like how many tangents they go on.
I think along those lines, you talked about self-awareness. I think that that EFPs also, I don't know, there's stereotypes out there, but I think we're also quite deep people when we're allowed to be, when we let ourselves be. And I think there's a lot more going on below the surface for both of our types that other people don't maybe even want to see, because it's really disturbing when authenticity gets going and starts being directed outwards. So
you think that like of the I guess the high NE types. So I guess the INPs and the ENPs that y'all are maybe taking the least seriously.
Well, EFPs, I think. Yeah,
I mean,
like
ESFPs, we have so many
authenticity
stereotypes.
co-pilots.
Yeah.
Yeah, authenticity auxiliary.
I didn't know if you
Definitely.
think that y'all are maybe of like the INPs and ENPs, if you think that y'all sometimes feel like those four, maybe y'all are taken the least seriously. As ESFPs, out of all 16, we're usually taken the least seriously. So I'm just curious though, like it sounds like y'all feel that too, like there is so much underneath the surface. Like if someone just like let you kind of showcase, you're like, oh my, I have so many thoughts and feelings about this.
I mean, I'll admit that I turned myself more into an STJ type for work specifically so that I am taken more seriously.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah. Well, it's not so bad. It helps me actually accomplish the things.
Yeah.
And, you know, if people take me seriously on the side, I try not to give up too much of myself. But I would say people actually think I'm dependable and detail oriented. So doing something right.
That key is like we're making some progress here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if ESFPs and ENFPs get the rep of DITs more often than other types unfairly. So they're really smart, but sometimes it's because they're very fun and playful. People tend to have a assumption off of that, which is inaccurate. Yeah. Even with my ENFP, she used to have people assume that she wasn't as intellectual as she is. Like when you get to know her, she's extremely contemplative and intellectual, but off the bat, she's very bubbly, and people mistaken that for a lack of depth.
But then my FI is like, if you're gonna write me off for that, like I feel like that's when I'm like, then I don't want to be friends with you anyway. You know, which sounds like so petty, but I think we talked about that in our one-on-one video, Joyce, where it's like I think both, especially ESFPs, but I think ENFPs too, show up as like very playful and like just very lighthearted. Because it's like I don't think either of our types take ourselves too seriously. I think life's too short to take yourself too seriously. Like laugh at yourself and all that. Laugh at your own jokes, even if you need to. But you know, like I do feel like sometimes IJs or ISJ types. Well, especially I have two Joes in the workplace where I'm like, whoa, I came off just a little too much energy for them. They think I'm really I'm like, but you know what? They don't want to be friends with me. Like, it's okay. Like, that's where I have depth. But it is that, like, to me, I want to be like disarming by being playful at first. You know, if someone didn't take you seriously because of that, I'm like, well, we probably wouldn't get along that great anyway.
Exactly.
Here's another possible difference. I noticed that my mother, who's an ESFP, is more of a kinesthetic learner. So she kind of learns how to cook by watching other people cook. And that's the same for other types of activities with her hands as well. It's almost instinctually know how to use something just by watching someone else use it. Yeah, it's knowing how to use your body just by watching someone else. You can like replicate their body movement or like understand how to do something. I don't know. How do ENFPs experience that?
I would say I benefit from it when I do acting, and I can probably embody emotions or get into that perspective and viewpoint with my NEFI. And I can also, the other thing is devil's advocate. It's slightly connected to that. So I may not know the point of view that is not being represented fairly, but I will go there, I'll go to bat for them if they're not present or if they don't have a voice. Very comfortable going and defending that point of view logically and yeah, that's
a really good point, Kyle. ENFPs, they tend to play devil's advocate a lot. So if you have an unrepresented view, like sometimes they'll fight for the view they don't even believe in because they just want to give that view equal representation and voice. How do ESFPs experience that? How about Brady?
So well, for me, because of FI, I want to know what people's viewpoints are, so I'm willing to take them on board. So that matters to me. You know, like my big thing is being kind to everybody, and I care about what everyone thinks and feels. So yeah, no, I'm willing to take on other people's viewpoints or at least listen to them. Does that mean that I can really take it on as my own? No. But I can listen to it and respect it.
Would you say that you would be willing to show up and help people that, like, you know what I mean? Like the SE is pretty good at showing up and doing stuff for people.
Yes.
Too.
Right.
Like
so,
I had some ESFPs help me move the last time I moved. it was really helpful.
I am
Right.
that person.
Yeah.
So whenever we've moved or anything like that in our house, I almost always do all the grunt work, because it's like I'll just go and start doing it. You know, like my wife will think about making sure that the event is enjoyable for everybody, you know, and she likes to create the atmosphere. Whereas I'm more like go out and actually move the boxes and, you know, do that kind of stuff.
But even like disaster relief, I think ESFPs are probably represented in that kind of area, overrepresented in a good way, whatever. But like, let's actually do something for these people, right?
Right. Well, it activates our FI, you know, like if we're actually living out our values by actually physically doing the values, absolutely.
Yeah, we both do it, but in our own ways, I think.
Yeah, I think we all love like an underdog, like to be an advocate for an underdog. Like whether not even, I know race comes to mind first, or like gender inequality or LGBT, like sexual orientation, but even like someone who maybe doesn't fit that mold. But like, for example, I kind of did an impulse thing at work a couple of years ago where there was just like some hostile work environment going on. I wasn't in the group, but I just went and took action, because I'm like, literally, I don't care if I get fired. This is so messed up that these people are like being bullied, or like it's a hostile work environment. I'm like, also, it's just bad business. Like, you don't get work done. Like, so it's just stupid also. Aside from like the ethical part of it, I'm like, you're not getting work done. Like, you idiot. Like, how do you think this is a good idea? And also, like, quit being an asshole. But where in this case, it was some people that were, you know, newer to the company, so they really didn't have a voice in the sense of like nothing race related, but really just like years of experience, or like really had like much credibility, hadn't really established themselves. And as someone who I did have that time under my belt, fortunately, Rob was like, you know what, I feel like this is my moment, my opportunity. I don't care, because I'm like, it's to me, it was right versus, it was black and white. And you know, it wasn't a popular decision, which I'm like, I would rather be fired over that. But I do like love an underdog like story. Or not a story, that sounds really, that's an experience, I guess. But it's like where you're like, if I have like the wherewithal, like the means to like help them or like be a voice for them, whether it's like disaster relief or a work corporate setting, regardless of the setting, it's like, if I'm in a place where I could make a difference, like in a way that like makes them like feel seen and heard, you like can't stop, you can't shut me up.
Yeah, I think like when I'm at a family function, and I'll notice that one of my nephews is feeling sad or alone or whatever, I always feel this compulsion to go to them and hang out with them for the night. You know, like I think that's something, and I don't know if any of you guys do the same kind of thing, but like that's just something I can't help.
Children, it speaks out to
I love kids and cool people. They're not shut down yet.
Right.
Yeah.
They're way more objective than we are to some extent, you know?
Yeah.
Or even just like random people on public transport who look a bit lonely or sad.
Right.
I have to fight the compulsion to like approach them and be like, do you want to talk?
Yeah.
It's like we're like going to make it worse for their life by talking to them. I'm like, oh, like,
Yeah.
okay, my day works by talking to me.
That's why, like, so the title of empathy tends to only be attributed to Effie, which I think is wrong. I think all feeling functions have empathy. Mentioning that scenario in transit, or noticing someone who looks sad and it's not explicitly stating it, that's empathy. So like all feeling functions are equally as empathetic. They just do it in different ways. It's different ways of empathy.
Now you're going to have a bunch of INFJs typing in the chat. No, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Screw that.
Yeah. I noticed there's a greater percentage of FI users who will mention a deep connection with children, or like with animals, or with, I don't know why, but I notice it.
We're very sensitive to feelings because we're very sensitive to our own feelings. And so we recognize that other people are going to be sensitive to those as well. And so out of respect for other people's feelings, I think we care about other people's feelings because we know how our feelings feel. And so therefore we're more empathetic towards other people who have emotions, because we're like, well, if I was in your situation, I'd probably feel similarly. So like, let's try to get through this. Let's try to work through it and use TE to kind of like get through the issue. Whereas like what I've noticed with FE and TI, is it's always trying to reframe how you think about things. Oh, you just need to change how you think about whatever the situation is. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's not all. Yeah.
I just
They
need
both
to
have
do
merit,
something.
but yeah.
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 And for us too, because that outer world is the more real world, like that's where we live, it's a little bit easier for us to put that FI out there. Again, we kind of talked about that a little bit before, whereas IFPs, they're more aware maybe of their own feelings, but they don't really feel driven as much to until they develop their auxiliary function to really go out there and apply it, right?
You know,
Absolutely.
this makes me think of I feel like I have like a handful of Enneagram books. Can't remember which one it was, but it was one of like the God, I can't remember which type of 2 or type of 7. What do you call it? Like the social self-preservation. What do you call it? The subtypes?
The
Experience.
instinctual subtypes, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was like one of the 7 subtypes, I think that maybe it might have been Beatrice Chestnut's book, The Complete Enneagram, but where I was like, am I 7? Like I'm pretty sure I'm a 2, but it made me think like when I did some work, like I'm like, oh, I'm a great person, but like I've worked with this orphanage down in Ecuador over the course of like 6 or 7 years, and I love going down there. And when I read this thing in this book, it was talking about for this subtype, I'm like, this makes so much sense. It's almost like I wasn't trying to be selfish. Like you're not doing it, but it's almost like it's subconscious. I wanted to help. I think it was my own inner child in some ways that like wanted to go help, like be present, like be something for them that they didn't have. Like it's going to make me emotional, but because I think I was missing that from my child, like where you're like, am I this saint? Which like obviously I never thought I was, but or is this really just almost like inner work? Like I saw this, felt this in me subconsciously. It wasn't really in my like, conscious awareness, but how I was acting out and kind of discovering that was by going to like, I just had this like, I was like, I have to work with kids that are like, feel like maybe disenfranchised. And it was people like, oh, that's so great. I'm like, and I've always saw it. And I'm not just like trying to sound so humble right now. I truly mean this. And I think y'all will understand. In those situations, they give you so much more than you give them. You're like, they are literally, it's such a different perspective of life, and you can be something for them that they don't have. There's something for you and giving you something that maybe you felt like you missed out on or kind of like need. That's like hole in your heart. And I don't know. I just felt like, and that was, I'm pretty sure I'll have to find that in Beatrice. I'm almost positive it was that book, but it was one of the 7 types.
Probably.
I don't know if it was
I'm
like
a social. I think social. Because I'm the counter type, so I can present like a 2.
I think it was the counter type for the 7. Yeah, because it was kind of unexpected. Like where it says it can like maybe show up as a 2, 4-ish type. I'll find it and let y'all know if you'll care. But it just made me kind of think of that, like where I do think the FI thing, like just to Michelle's point of noticing, like, because we have our own feelings and whether we're taking action on purpose or it's just kind of like a side action, like we don't even realize why we're doing it. It's a recognition of like almost like just another soul, because like you want to be humanized, so you're like, well, I'll just humanize, and maybe they'll humanize me in return, which is probably Enneagram too. I'm like, I'll help you, you help me. But yeah,
and give them the validation that we crave too.
100%. Reminds me of this saying. It was like, be who you needed when you were younger. And I'm like, you can read that 2 ways, in my opinion. Either be that person for yourself or be that like for somebody else. Like be who you needed when you were younger, which I think is kind of like reparenting work or like working with children. And I feel like that probably speaks to y'all as well. So yeah, sorry, I could like ramble on that forever because it's really important to me.
Yeah, that's a really, really good topic. Yeah. To branch off of Brady's point earlier, so ESFPs, what you'll notice is that they're more okay with trial and error with the outer world. So ESFPs will act and then they'll recalibrate and act. So they're more okay with just putting themselves out there and just doing it. Whereas like with ENFPs, there's a delay. Like it's either the only time I've seen my ENFP actually do something instantly is it's a part of her routine. Yeah. But with ESFPs, it's immediate thought to action all the time. So that's a really, really big difference. If you're wondering if they're ENFP or ESFP, is there a delay with their reaction time with acting, or do they just seamlessly act? Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And so thank you everyone for coming out. I really appreciate the talk. I love the huge FI hearts you all have that care so much about people. Yeah. It makes oh, Kyle.
Kyle leaves.
Yeah, it's too many hearts for him. Yeah.
We love your heart, Joyce.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love the FI, like, not banter, but, like, just how it plays off each other. It's just so accepting. Like, kind of become as you are. At least with your FE, it feels that way for me, so.
Yeah. It's like we're building off of each other's feelings and just making this a huge love fest.
Yes.
Yeah. Our hearts are going to grow 10 times bigger after this, yeah.
Like the Grinch.
Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be so heavy when I go weigh myself on a weight scale. I'm going to weigh 10 pounds heavier because my heart grew.
Ma'am, you have an enlarged heart. Yeah, you need a cardio.
That's what I'm going to say when I step on that scale later.
Yeah, for sure. I have a doctor's appointment next week. I'm like, it's a heart thing. Joyce did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I really enjoyed exploring the metaverse with the ENFPs and being in the present moment with you ESFPs. It was a really, really fun time. You guys are very playful, and I feel like the mood improves whenever like ESFPs or ENFPs enter a room. It just feels like love, acceptance, fun times, and just love in a capsule. Yeah. Yeah.
Making me blush.
I hooked up on these panels. I'm like, I'm not going to do it this time. And
There's just a level of genuineness with both of your types. You both are able to have fun, but also when it comes down to it, there's a real heart behind it. I love hearing pieces of your FI. It feels like a privilege almost. Yeah. You're giving us a sneak glimpse into your heart and how it functions, and we're left better off for it.
Thank you.
And
thanks for making us feel safe enough to do it. So
for sure.
Yeah.
And it was so nice to meet all of you as well.
Yeah, you too, Kristin.
You.
I'm glad the future looks bright in Australia as it's March 30th there. So
you guys are gonna love March 30th. Let me tell you.
Get up in the water.
Kristin, you have the best 16 personality skits on YouTube. I love them. That's why I promote you so hard. I really
Thank you
believe
so
in
much. Thank you so much.
Limit.
My laptop has 5% battery, and my fear is that I'm just going to disappear. So thank you very much. I need everyone to know that so that I don't look rude if I disappear.
Yeah. It's not March 30th.
Yeah. So check out Dear Kristin, everyone. Also, Heart of Michi is a really great channel too. Yeah. I love your purple dyed hair. And you had a video where you were putting on makeup and you were being really raw and genuine, Michelle. And that was really nice to watch. Yeah. It's always great to watch videos where someone is really being themselves because it gives people permission to be themselves as well. So every time you produce a piece that is that genuine and raw, Michelle, it makes people feel permission to be themselves as well. So thank you for that FI genuineness.
Thank you. That's definitely part of the intention, is to help other people know that it is okay to let yourself have emotions outside of your body sometimes where other people can see it.
Yeah. It's okay to cry. Yeah. And you taught people that. Yeah. And Brady, I think that you're a really cool dude. You're a really fun dude. You what can you say? You have a lot of finesse. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're very strong too, because you're very optimistic. And I have an episode with Brady coming up. It's on psoriatic arthritis. It's really amazing because like Brady, he acts like it's nothing, but it's really like he's able to, no matter how much, Brady is going through, he's able to put on a smile and able to make people feel good and have a good time. And that is like amazing. And that he's a trooper and he's a soldier and he's really great.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Mariana, I really enjoy our friendship. You always have this amazing curled hair. Like whenever you come on my panels, you look like a legit beautiful model diva. Like, I don't know, you just
I'm trying to get off.
Yeah, you have an eye for fashion and You have also a motherly type of vibe to you as well, too. Yeah, yeah. You feel nurturing. Yeah, and I enjoy that. Yeah, that's what me and John call you. We call you mom.
Yeah, when you told me that, I was like, I'm scared for the ESFP humanity if y'all think I'm the mom of the group. But I can be a cool mom, you know, like in Mean Girls movies. Like I'm not a regular.
The Amy
I'm a
Poehler
cool
character. Yeah,
I'm a cool mom.
The all
Thank
pink
you.
sweatsuit. Yeah.
Side of a velour, like
Yeah. And so thank you everyone for the amazing compare and contrast. When we were talking about FI, I really loved hearing about how y'all respect people's souls, like their individual souls as people. Yeah. So that's moving and touching. Long story short, y'all have a special place in my heart. Everyone who comes on my videos is like a part of my family in some way. Yeah. It really feels like that. It feels like my ohana, like every, yeah.
Thanks for having us as part of it. It's
yes,
pretty awesome.
exactly.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joyce.
Yeah, this was really fun. And thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all in the next episode. Bye everyone.
Bye.